The purpose of sacred sovereignty, integral unity. Archangel Metatron via James Tyberonn. Greetings, beloved. I am Metatron, Lord of Light, and we welcome this gathering. It is 2015, year 3, of the newly ascended planet Earth. In this extraordinary phase of linear time on your planet, there is a uniquely opportune juncture for self-review and chosen solitude. But before we begin with this important message, we wish to clarify that while we are directing the first part of this message to those of you who are alone, we wish to emphasize that periods of contemplation and sacred review can and do present themselves to everyone, those who are in solitary phases of life, as well as to those in relationship. Now, let us proceed. Many of you, particularly those above the age of 49, the 7th 7-year cycle, may now find yourselves in a state of sovereign solitude. This may be for any number of reasons. You may be alone because your spouse has passed, children have grown up and left home, relationships terminated, or perhaps marriage contracts have ended, and so many of you, in this now, find yourselves living alone. And although this path is at times quite lonely, quite difficult and may feel unnatural for many of you, it is perhaps a detachment with myriad purpose. Indeed, it is perhaps a temporal hermitage, a select seclusion of noble intention. Whether or not you fully realize it, it is a time in which many of you have specifically planned, in higher self. If you now find yourself alone, it may then be your time of chosen solitude. For solitary contemplation is an attribute of mastery. It is a tool of the wise second. You see, in times of chosen solitude, you are able to quiet the mind and open to spirit. And in this process angelic portals open, and spirit embraces you. The paradox is that in sacred solitude you truly are not alone. In truth you are in contact with higher self, and merging with self, all aspects of self. In such phases of detachment, however difficult, your separateness enables an opportunity, if it is wisely considered, and optimally utilized. This is especially pertinent, and often chosen by those of you entering your 7th 7-year cycle, age 49, and the 8th 7-year cycle, age 56, for this is a phase of transition, a stage, in which you begin to truly realize your mortality. It is a time in which there is a deep inner drive to make sense of what has happened in your life, and to carefully consider what has thus far been lost and gained, and what remains to be accomplished in the sojourn. In this time, specifically because you are alone, there is an unentangled freedom, a powerful silence, a serenity that can enhance and open a more lucid communication to higher self, and thus, provide a much more clear interface with the divine. An opportune liberation ensues for you to more closely examine the self, to recalibrate, in a way that may not have occurred in a more active lifestyle. And therefore you now have opportunity to review your life expression in this deep, profound solitude. There is less commitment in this phase to others, and a greater commitment to self. And indeed such deep review is not only required for all advanced souls. It is something that advanced souls absolutely do plan for themselves. Indeed, specific times and places in the life stream planning are scripted for secluded contemplation by those who are on the advanced path of mastery. It has always been so. Such solitude is never happenstance. Such solitude is sacred. So we ask you to consider what we are telling you. Listen to our message and meditate on what we share. And if this resonates, We ask you to use this time wisely and embrace it, for you are on the cusp of a great graduation. There is a recurring message in many of your religious texts, and it reads as follows: "For everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." Divine solitude is then a noble condition, one that offers opportunities for quantum leaps in terms of growth, when understood and recognized for its profound purpose. You see, the divine self is ultimately, conclusively alone, for specific periods in its final pursuit of omnipotence. Now, from a higher perspective, it is true that you are never truly alone, because on the highest level, all consciousness is plurality consciousness. But in the duality experience of Earth, growth has many facets that must occur on a level of individuality. Accordingly, in this manner, in this sense, there are indeed requisite experiences in which purpose solitude occurs. Ascended masters that walk the earth have for millennia sought solitude in their incarnations before achieving mastery. So it is with many of you now. Dear ones, many of you who find yourself alone at this time are of the mistaken belief that you must immediately find a new partner. Many of you seek your so-called soulmate, your elusive twin flame, in the idea that pairing is the only natural state, that being in relationship is always the better way. Yet we tell you, in many cases among the advanced souls, you are alone because you have planned it. In higher self you plan this time for self-review. Indeed, solitude can be a special and noble undertaking. It can often be a time for divine solitude. So do not feel that being alone is necessarily always the result of a failure to maintain a functional relationship. For many of you, it is planned time to go inward, to find your wholeness, in facing self without a shoulder to lean on. And this is especially true for those of you in the 7th and 8th cycles of life. For many of you in these phases of life, this solitude may have seemed to just suddenly happen. You may be confused, it may not necessarily be something you wanted, or thought would occur, or consciously chose. But dear ones, nothing happens in your life that you did not create. For everything there is a season, and if you now find yourself in such a phase of solitude, explore it, embrace it for a time, for it is a time to find oneness. Among souls seeking mastery, approximately 1 of every 4 lifetimes is a lifetime chosen for recalibration and advancement, utilizing the planned focal freedom to do so by sacred solitude. Those seeking sanctified light, what is termed consecrated enlightenment, choose specific periods in their life plan to be alone for a time. This does not mean you will always be in solitude, it simply means for a time you have chosen to work on the self, to achieve self-love and make final adjustments. Love of self is a condition that many, especially those from Christian heritage, have lost. Christianity, with its teachings of original sin, taught you that you were flawed in your nature, that you needed forgiving. You spent lifetimes prostrate asking forgiveness for who you are. You lost your sense of your divinity, and found it easy to give, but difficult to receive. In such a one-sided exchange, balance was lost. For others, there may be a sense of self-condemnation from actions or missteps that have deeply programmed a sense of guilt and unworthiness. An inability to love the self has pervaded and created self-denial because you are unable to forgive yourself for whatever action led you to this erroneous belief. As a result, relationships have failed. It is a great truth that you cannot truly love others until you first love yourself. As long as you hold beliefs of unworthiness, You will inadvertently create a reaction of subconscious rejection and denial in others. It is the double edge of the law of attraction. You will repeat this self-created exile, this self-projected punishment, until you learn that you are divine, that you are a flawless spark of God in your eternal divinity. Life will change when you accept this great wisdom, and learn to consciously create your life. But self-love is an absolute requirement. Love is not an emotion, it is a vibratory frequency. Love of self is not earned, it is a birthright. Love is the only resonance that will allow you to graduate to higher realms. And so, for these reasons, it is often easier in unentangled solitude that master souls choose periods of time in their sojourns to recalibrate, to rediscover who they are, to rediscover love of self as a necessary condition of spiritual advancement. It is therefore in times of solitude that balance is regained, that one learns to love the self, and to release guilt and erroneous concepts of unworthiness. Love is the way. A way that must contain love of self. Dear human, until you love yourself you cannot love others, obtain mastery, nor truly love life. And it may take lifetimes of self-examination in solitude for you to realize this. Love begins in you. There is no other path. Dear human, life is difficult and challenging. And that is a great truth. Many situations in life are uncomfortable and provocative. That is by design. It is how you scripted your life in order to grow. The obstacles in your path were put there by you, by your higher self to serve as springboards. It is not easy, nothing of great value is obtained without effort. But it is often when you are out of your comfort zone, in a state of confused conundrum or sadness that you are driven by circumstance to face and resolve your challenges, and transcend them. To do so is an attribute of mastery in its finest aspect. Great numbers of seekers are facing the self in 2015. It is a year perfectly designed an astrological pattern for this final cleanup. Sweeping out what was hidden so that it may be resolved. The new Earth is transforming further into the crystalline aspect in 2015 and beyond. Nothing can remain in shadow, nothing can be hidden in this impeccable coherent light of the newly ascended Earth. And for the many that are in solitude, and the many that are not, this is your perfect and chosen time to reconnect to self, to examine your life purpose, and to polish up any areas of tarnish, to remove any final obstacles. You may ask whether solitude or partnerships bring greater advancement to the soul in the new Earth energetics. The question is timely and especially pertinent for many of you in the 2015 dawn of the Ascension. The short answer is that both coupling and solitude have their divine purpose, and we underline the word both. Much is gained in being in committed loving relationship. This is the natural and chosen circumstance in most sojourns on the plane of Earth. Yet for the soul seeking final mastery, solitary status is also natural. So we emphasize there is great purpose in solitude. Advanced souls plan for it. It is no error that great numbers of you on the final steps of the ascended path of enlightenment in 2015 and beyond are alone in this period. If you are among these, we tell you that perhaps your solitude is appropriate. Perhaps it is as it should be. You see, it is how many of you planned it. Yet many of you feel that the loneliness is too much to bear and that you must pursue a partner. The elusive twin flame. Dear souls, there is much confusion around the concept of the twin flame, the soul mate, and the role and nature of optimal partnership in mastery of self. Solitude is intended to be a period of sublime reverence of self. Your life and your experience in this plane is your own creation, your own living tapestry, woven by your individual belief. Within solitude, the soul is prompted into self-review, and opportunity is given to dive deeply into the deep waters that flow within you. To swim in the ocean of self, and in so doing rediscover the love within, to learn what a brilliant spark of God you truly are. Relationships are a method of reflecting the affectivity of your belief system, and giving you feedback on what, simply stated, is working, and what is not. Detachment requires the individual to explore the self, to reacquaint with the inner horizon, and this facilitates and necessitates sovereignty. Sovereignty is the prepotency of mastership. A relationship of two sovereign non-dependent humans has greater balance, greater creativity, and greater longevity than a pairing of two beings codependent on one another. Do you understand? Ultimately, each soul must clearly define self in order to gain mastery. Self-mastery is embodied in periods of planned detachment. It is that period in which impeccability is crystallized. And we tell you, dear ones, crystallization, through impeccability, is a necessary phase of self-mastery. It is a calibrational juncture in the multidimensional sojourn. One enters the void, the great mystery in the quest for fortitude and sovereign vision, alone, without a shoulder to lean on. And in the process, one discovers sublime wholeness and self-completion. Do not misunderstand our meaning. There is great validity in coupling, in the natural aspect of soulmate. But conclusively, one walks the path of mastery in sovereign detachment. One becomes enlightened when one learns to transcend the physical self. Each of you must endeavor to the final conquest of what we term as impeccability. Impeccability is the crystallization or uniform clarity of the soul, and it is a necessary virtue of mastery. This involves release of dependency, the release of all that does not serve your divinity. It is a rebooting and reprogramming of all you are. We have told you that the language, the fabric of higher dimension, is sacred geometry. Impeccability is the geometric clarity of the soul mind. By defining oneself through impeccability, one becomes crystalline, and thus more capable of divine consciousness within the geometric light of coherent higher planes. It is only accomplished by deciding who you are, what you believe, and then living it. Recognizing your truth, and aligning fully to them. James Tyberonn, question to Metatron. Are you saying that loving relationships, such as marriage, are not our ultimate union? Metatron responds, remember that in the highest realm you are in sacred oneness, each in plurality consciousness as an integral part of the divine oneness. So in terms of duality experience, the answer to your question is yes. In this context, yes. Masters, in highest reality, you are a unified plural consciousness. And that is your ultimate union. Relationships in the linear duality experience are a means to the end. We are saying that loving relationships are a sacred, joyful tool of achieving self-mastery, but that ultimately in each soul's journey there will be an ultimate growth into sovereignty. This sovereign self is a sufficient self and truly has no dependent need of another. Such conceptual dependency, and we emphasize the word dependency, can be a deterrent to mastery. In truth, it is most often only within states of sovereignty, that you merge in wholeness with your soul's other half, the other part of your soul that's separated in duality expression. Each of you have a male and female component in duality, and the other half is remerged in the integral divine self before rising into higher realm. This is in fact a required unification mergence, and is occurring for so many of you as you enter 2015. Many of you consider a soulmate and twin flame the same. They are not the same. Only the syntax is in parity. The true meanings are different. The twin flame is the other half of the same soul, split in duality, and these are very rarely in physicality together. The soulmate is, in our terms, another soul with whom you have contracted to grow together within physical duality, as a means of development and exploration of love with another soul, by movement toward common purpose. And dear ones, in this aspect, you have many soulmates. And it is important to add that in many sojourns, souls will select partners that are quite different from themselves. This is in order to grow, to achieve a rounding and balance. But it is important in such chosen pairings that both parties deal with one another in a respectful way, and seek to find harmony together. For that is indeed their higher purpose in coming together. But Augean, respect. Mutual respect is a key component, and accordingly there is a give and take involved in finding a harmonic balance between two very differing personality types. So often, relationships that may not be a perfect match in one aspect are a beneficial pairing in terms of learning and growth, of finding balance and learning to find the harmony in the give and take process of any relationship. In truth, the family arrangements chosen in duality are often the best means, the best method, however taxing, however difficult at times, in which to resolve past and present disharmonies and issues. In this sense, the concept of opposites attract indeed applies, for two very different people can through interaction, however complex, be forced to deal with one another's faults and differences in a learning curve. For often in such relationships, each partner will point out the faults in the other, and adjustments can be made. We tell you that not all pairings are meant to last a lifetime. Although culturally in many societies, relationships that have run their course and may devolve into abuse and negative toxicity are still unfortunately held together by society pressure and stern religious belief. Many dysfunctional couples, in toxic states of abusive interaction, stay together in the false belief that it is good for the children. Abusive relationships are never emotionally beneficial for children. In terms of coupling, of husband-wife pairings, there are in certain situations problems of imbalance, meaning that one partner is more dominant. One partner is more committed than the other. There are scenarios in which a one-sided imbalance occurs, and by this we mean, one gives more than they receive and vice versa. Such one-sidedness can indeed be a lessening, but this scenario rarely survives for long periods. If balance is not achieved, the relationship usually will not endure, although even in this, there can be valuable lessening and growth. The seeming paradox in linear relationships, that of the soulmate concept, not the twin flame, is that a relationship of two non-dependent sovereign beings has greater joy, greater balance, greater interface with the divine, greater opportunity for harmony than a relationship based on codependent relationships. Do you see? In this current time, in the present phase of the new planet Earth, many of you are actually merging with your etheric, non-physical, twin flame and molding your sacred fullness into one physicality in order for you to enter the crystalline realm of the new earth in integral self-unified wholeness. In other words, many of you are now combining the male aspect and female aspect of the self into unified oneness. It is the merging of the twin flame, combining the parts of you that were divided, split into gender duality, into integral wholeness in order to move into non-polarity. In a manner of speaking, you are marrying self, combining the two halves of your duality self into sacred oneness. In most cases, this soul reconnection is accomplished in solitude or in sovereign non-dependent relationships. So we say embrace your chosen period of sovereign solitude. It is the sign of your soul's intent to enter into the final evolvement into crystalline Merkandal mastery. We add that many who are in this life, of the female gender, have chosen particularly efficacious roles in the balancing of the planet at this time. Is it not true that the planet has been unbalanced in an overage of patriarchal energies for millennia? That is why it would appear that a vast majority of those drawn to the new age of metaphysical spirituality are female, you see, to anchor in the divine feminine. Females have been conditioned and labeled in your current paradigm as the weaker sex. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Yet some of the females who find themselves now in single status are culturally conditioned to feel they must have a partner. Again, we say embrace your solitude. You chose it. We honor you for the path you have chosen. The ideal for the planet is not to be female or male, rather a perfect balance of both. But it is at the moment still in an imbalance of patriarchal resonance. We honor those of you in female biology. Your strength is indeed progressing in creating the nurturing balance. Truly the oversoul is androgynous, self-contained, self-sufficient. That does not mean that love is not the frequential basis of the soul. Indeed, love is the highest vibration. Love is the resonance that is produced by the ascended soul to the cosmos and reflected back as a collective harmonic of crystalline love. There is a time when those of you who have played the role of soulmates will individualize and, in your terms, part in joy. The evolved soul in achieving omnipotence will become consummately self-sufficient and, in so doing, radiate spectacular, unconditional love to all. That is as it should be, as it must be. It is how you ascend. The final graduation of the soul occurs in sovereignty between each individual and what may be termed God, the divine consciousness gestalt. You see, it is done within the divine self in universal harmonic to the all that is. Do you understand? This is the activation of self to the divine resonance of the quantum crystalline field. Individualization must occur before the final collective reunion. It must alchemically occur to allow for the final coalescence into the all that is. It is who you are. It is the I am that I am. It is the chosen, destined path of all of you. For this process you stand alone. In summation, our point here is that if you find yourself in solitude, recognize its purpose. And for those of you in relationships, we wish to clarify and make the firm notation that if you are in a relationship, we are not, by any means, suggesting or implying that you should end it in order to find solitude. You can indeed find private time and create sufficient space for obtaining time for solitude within any positive relationship. Those of you who are in long-term marriages will, of course, go through differentiating phases. Those couples of long-term marriages entering the senior years, the years of retirement, will, in some cases, find themselves drifting apart for a time and seeking greater understanding, and at times feel separate. But this is often simply the natural adjustment to the new phases of this latter phase of life. So, understand that sensing a disconnection, then, in such cases, does not imply that the long-lasting relationship is now suddenly an impediment to your evolving. It may indeed simply be a transitional stage, one in which your need for solitude surfaces, and such solitude can still be effectively achieved in the pairing by creating your own space for certain periods of the day and week. Perhaps this can be done simply by spending time on solitary walks, or by sitting alone under a tree in your back garden or in a park, or by attending weekend seminars or making small solitary retreats if you seek time to be alone. In certain terms, there are requisite experiences in which a seeming form of solitude occurs. In that sense, it can be said that the soul enters the earth alone, and the spirit departs the earth alone. Relationships, indeed, will shift when one, or both, enters the phase of combining with their twin flame. But this can be achieved while in a relationship. The relationship will shift, but for the better. In the marriage to self, the twin flame unity, sacred sovereignty, is achieved, and a state of non-dependence can absolutely flower and thrive in a pairing of two non-dependent souls. And so if you are in a relationship, refine it in beauty to the greater love of non-dependence. You will indeed discover the love expands and the relationship becomes more appropriate, more resplendent in non-dependency. Just as you are discovering relationships of unbalanced dependency are one-way streets and ultimately fail. In sovereignty, humanity will see themselves in the functional framework of being whole and not being their partner's property or someone's better half. Each will bring their integral, whole self in fullness, in robust flow of energy into relationship, in a manner that often does not occur today. There are pre-agreed points that allow for freedom of choice and for change, even if that change is to end the partnership. In sovereignty, individuals share their best, without compromise of ideals. Each will recognize the divinity of the other, and retain the integrity of self. They will afford their own promises and choices of a new paradigm, but there will be avenues and opportunities of adjustments and the ability of reviewing terms. This will allow for greater recognition of the self. These will be designed to prevent energy blockage and reduce dysfunctional marriages and divorce complications and lawsuits. You see, some relationships in these terms will indeed last a lifetime, some will not. But the archetype of sovereignty will better support both, based on choice and mutual agreement of each individual's terms. And as such, independence becomes joyful, devoid of one partner being dominant and imposing their beliefs, morality, control, or imposing their will over another. True sacred sovereignty can be attained, and each soul can optimally integrate within the twin flame into wholeness. Humankind, in mass today, truly does not recognize or understand their soul, their divine self. Self is unfortunately regulated to the realm of ego personality by the masses. It is true that a high degree of the light quotient is awakened on the planet now, more than has occurred at any other time. But even so, the majority of humans on the planet are unconscious. Religion in the new paradigm must be individualized, must truly recognize the nature of self, the nature of the divine soul. None of your world religions truly answer these questions today. None of your religions acknowledge your cosmic extraterrestrial heritage nor your multidimensional nature. And that must and will be acknowledged and understood in the new paradigm. None of your current mainstream religions can accurately and completely express the true history of man on the earth. As such, there is no one true religion on the planet today. Most are bought and sold on preset regulated templates. Each claim to know the paths to God, to be able to lead the way to God, yet none truly do. Each has its dogma. Each has its hierarchy, and some utilize fear-based controls that encourage fanaticism and zealotry. Man searches for God more earnestly now than at any other time on the planet, and so the seeking in itself has the potential to bring in the light. Few of the present-day religious teachers are true teachers, dogmatic scholars perhaps, but not teachers of truth. Others are ego, power-based charlatans who project a false impression of their credentials. And we tell you that deceivers and grandiose masqueraders are ever present even within metaphysics and the so-called New Age arenas. Many proclaimed leaders become ego-addicted to adulation and feed on the energy of impressionable followers. You need no gurus in 2015, year 3 of the new earth. When integrity is not maintained, the connection to true spirit is disconnected, and all who are human are subject to fallen and out of integrity. Truly, the way in the ascension is the ability of each sovereign soul to raise into his or her higher integral self. Look inside and find your own divinity within your heart. Not through blindly following a guru, evangelist, channeler, or spiritual leader, but through self. Accept only what you discern individually to resonate as true. Dear ones, do not give your power to another. Each of you can and must first channel your higher selves. Study, look, listen, discern, review, and only accept what resonates within you. The way to the divine masters is through the sacred sovereignty of self. No one, no other person, can do this for you. In the University of Earth, you must make your own choices, take your own tests, learn your own lessons, and earn in this way your individual mastery. The soul enters the earth alone, and the spirit departs the earth alone. And in the ascension, the way to the higher self is through self-definition and seeking that aspect of God inside each of you, with the great desire that is embedded in each of your souls. Study, seek, and work. You cannot advance if you become disheartened, depressed, or apathetic. Lethargy does not serve you. Effort is required to rise above duality. It has always been so. You are here to make known the unknown. Work at it. Be a warrior of light within duality, for the true battles are within, for self-mastery. The path is not easy. But within self-mastery lies an energy so exquisite that it fuels all you require to move forward. And there is ever another level above, for each you ascend to. Consciousness is eternally kinetically expanding. It does not reach a level of static dormancy, and we tell you that your higher selves find great humor in cemetery epitaphs of rest and peace, for joy is a dynamic state. Discover your path. Discover yourself. Love yourself, love one another, and love the divinity inside you and inside everyone. Discover the multidimensional aspects of your true soul. That is the nobility of sovereignty. And though the path is at times quite difficult and lonely, Know that such is the challenge of duality, for above, you are whole, and lack nothing. In the high realm, you are in your sacred nature, of integral wholeness, in complete and abundant bliss. Master's enlightenment occurs one heart at a time. It is in facing Creator in solitude that each soul graduates into the higher realms. It has always been so. Each of you will choose solitude at some point, recognize it, and embrace it, for it is the sacred time for advancement. Masters, there is a common trait among those who achieved enlightenment in the past. They radiated love, and in most of their sojourns, they were uncoupled. And all people were drawn to them. Their vibrations brought a sense of well-being and serenity to all in their presence. They were in states of sublime sovereignty, and in conscious unity with all. They were united in soul aspect, internally integrated in perfected union with the male-female divinity of their twin soul in oneness, and they were so beloved. We are ever with you, and we offer unconditional love. We ask that you treat yourself and others with nurturing love and respect. I am Metatron, Lord of Light, and I share with you these truths. You are beloved. And so it is.